"You're staying here now, Mom. It's for the best." That's what my son said as he shut the car door and left me in the driveway of the Rose Hill residential home with nothing but a small suitcase and a paper bag of my medications. Not a hug, not a backward glance. Just the slam of the door and the silence of a decision already made. I stood there, my hands trembling slightly from the chill in the wind, or maybe from the fact that I still couldn't understand what had just happened. Yesterday morning I was in my home sipping tea, feeding the birds. Dea was someone else's responsibility, a resident, a room number, a liability. The nurse who greeted me was kind in that trained, distant way, smiling, nodding, touching my elbow like I might collapse at any moment. "Mrs. Sanders, welcome to Rose Hill. I'm Carrera. Let's get you settled in, shall we?" She spoke softly like I was fragile. Not. My bones may ache and my back may curve. Bit more than it used to, but I've walked through storms these girls can't imagine. The room was clean at least. Pale curtains, a single bed, wooden wardrobe with squeaky hinges. An armchair by the window, no smell of bleach, which surprised me, but also no sign of life. Kara pointed to the button by the bed. "You press that if you need help." She looked at me like she expected me to cry. "I'll be fine," I said. I was just not in the way they wanted me to be. They told me it was temporary. "Just a little while, Mom, until we figure things out. You'll be comfortable here." That was my daughter Emily's line, said with her polished smile and a tilt of her head that reminded me more and more of her father in his worst moods. But comfortable for whom? I hadn't asked to be placed here. No one asked what I wanted. I was simply delivered, like a package too heavy to carry around any longer. Later that evening, after the settling in, I sat by the window watching the street lights flicker on. The view was nothing like my garden back home. Well, roses, no bird feeder, just a concrete path and a plastic bench. Across from me in the next room, I could see an old woman sleeping with her mouth open. Her door was half closed. Her name, I later learned, was Mabel. Mabel was 84, quiet, sharp when she wanted to be. She'd been here for 3 years. "They say it's temporary," she told me the next morning when I mentioned it, "but no one leaves unless they're dead or forgotten." I didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of the hallway made me flinch. The mattress was too soft, the silence too loud, and worst of all, my children didn't. They hadn't called the next day either, nor the day after that. 3 days in, I finally asked the receptionist if I could use the phone. "Of course," she said, smiling too much. "But most of our residents use their mobile. I don't have one." Emily said I'd lose it or forget to charge it. The call went to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Emily and Mark. Leave a message." I didn't. What was I supposed to say? "Thanks for dropping me off like an unwanted dog." Instead, I sat in the common room where the television always blared and the other residents sat in rows staring at game shows they couldn't follow. A woman next to me, Agnes I think, was crying silently into her lap. No one noticed. Or maybe they were just too used to it. On the 4th day, Kara came in with forms. Just some signatures, Mrs. Sanders. Routine consent to care medication. Schedule billing information. I hesitated. Billing. Invoices go to your children, but we need you to sign off. Just formality. Sign. What choice did I have? Something inside me was waking up slowly, like old coals catching wind. That afternoon, during family visiting hours, no one came for me. Mabel's daughter brought her flowers and a milkshake. They sat in the courtyard laughing. Emily apparently had a meeting. David texted that he was out of town. He didn't even know where town was. When I asked Kara if I could go for a walk outside the grounds, she smiled apologetically. Sorry. That's only allowed with family or staff. So I'm locked in. Not just protected. I nodded slowly. Protected. That night I didn't cry. I boiled water in the small communal kitchen down the hall and made myself tea. Real tea, not the lukewarm stuff they served with dinner. Then I sat on the bed, opened the drawer in the nightstand and pulled out the notebook I'd packed without telling anyone. I wrote down a single line. If they think this is how my story ends, they don't know who raised them. I tried the door once more just to be sure. It wasn't locked, not technically. But when I turned the handle and stepped into the hallway, one of the aides appeared almost instantly, like they had some kind of sensor. Going somewhere, Mrs. Sanders. Her voice was chipper too. Chipper like syrup poured over something rotting. Just stretching my legs. Keep it to the West Wing. It's easy to get turned around. Turned around. I'd lived in the same house for 52 years, raised 2 children, buried a husband, kept a garden, paid every bill on time, and even tiled my own bathroom floor. Now I was being warned not to get lost in a corridor with 3 turns. Nodded politely and turned back. Later, Mabel looked at me over the rim of her glasses. They'll let you walk, she said, as long as you don't look like you're heading for the gate. She'd been here long enough to stop pretending. Once they put you in, they make it hard to walk out. Not because they're cruel. 'Cause it's inconvenient. I didn't answer. I just sat beside her. On the bench near the window, pretending to read, watching. The staff had a rhythm. Breakfast, meds, TV, lunch, naps, meds. Dinner, more TV. A few bathroom accidents along the way. Some minor arguments over chairs or remote controls, but mostly stillness. A padded, painted stillness that muffled everything real. And the residents, they disappeared one by one. Mrs. Ellison in 204 taken to hospital, never came back. Frank in 103. His bed stripped bare one morning. No explanation. You weren't told anything. You just saw the empty chairs and knew. By the end of the week, I had a list in my notebook. Window facing south. Latch broken. Back exit by. Laundry room used only by staff. Visiting hours free. 4 to 6 p.m. Sanitary worker named Robin. Distracted. Eddie. Carrara's shift ends at 6 o'clock. Wasn't much, but it was more than nothing. I'd always believed in observing first. Children reveal themselves if you're quiet enough. So do nurses. So do liars. That evening I tried to call David again. No answer. Just another message. Busy week, Mom. We'll visit Sunday. And it came. It didn't. I sat in the lobby with my cardigan folded neatly across my lap. For 3 hours watching the door. Mabel shuffled past with her walker. They're not coming, hun, she said without cruelty. They never do. At night I couldn't sleep. Not from sadness, from fury. Not the loud, dramatic kind. Not the yelling or the door slamming or the weeping in bathroom stalls. No, this was cold, quiet fury. The kind that starts behind the ribs and spreads like ice. Got up around midnight, made tea in the dark, and sat on the edge of the bed. In the silence, I heard my late husband's voice. Not literally, but the way one remembers a certain tone. Hell, don't let them take your name off the mailbox. He'd said that once, joking, when we were newly married and broke when his mother suggested we move into her house and start fresh. I didn't then, and I wouldn't now. When morning came, I asked Kara if she could print something for me. Of course, she said brightly. Just send it to the front desk email. She thought it was a crossword or a birthday card. She didn't ask questions. The document I sent was 2 pages long, written last night, titled simply Power of Attorney. Revocation was a start. I didn't have my lawyer's number anymore. Not since switching phones years ago, but I remembered the name of his firm. It was printed on the edge of a Christmas card from years back. I still had it tucked into the back of my wallet behind an old receipt and a picture of Emily from 1994. The receptionist connected me to the office. A young woman named Jessica answered. I explained everything as simply as I could. My name is Helen Sanders. I need to revoke a document my son filed. I want control back. I want my rights restored. Jessica didn't ask why. She didn't gasp or pity me. She simply said, "We can help. Can you come into the office?" "No," I said. "I can't leave." There was. Do you have someone who can act on your behalf? A friend, maybe. Thought of everyone I knew. Most were gone. The few who remained had their own wheelchairs, oxygen tanks, and medications. Then I remembered Lydia Marks. She used to be my neighbor. 30 years younger than me, but kind. The kind of person who brought soup when I was sick, left flowers without a name tag. We lost touch when she moved after her husband died. But I still had her address. Jessica agreed. If I could get Lydia to meet the firm, they'd start the process. Now I had a name, a plan, a first thread, but I needed to move carefully. Quietly, because the truth was beginning to show itself in cracks and offhand comments. That afternoon, while helping me adjust my bedding, one of the aides said something too casually. "Your daughter mentioned you're here for good now. Said you weren't safe on your for good. Not temporary. Not until we figure things out." Smiled politely. My hands stayed still, my voice calm. But my thoughts, they started running. The envelope came on a Wednesday. Return address. Just my name written in Emily's narrow, perfect handwriting. Inside were 2 things. A pamphlet titled Understanding Long-Term Care. Transitions, and a typed letter with a smiling clip art son in the corner. "Dear Mom, we know this hasn't been easy. We truly believe Rose Hill is the best place for you now. Safe, comfortable, with professionals who can meet your needs. Please try to see this as a new beginning, not an end. Love always, Emily and David." I folded the paper neatly and placed it in the drawer under my notebook. I didn't tear it. I didn't cry. What's the point? Instead, I walked slowly down the hallway to the common room where Mabel was doing her puzzle in the corner, glasses slipping down her nose. "They sent the sun," I said, sitting next to her. She didn't look up. "That little cartoon thing with the smile." He nodded. "They sent it to me too. Means you're not going home." It was official now then. Not even a conversation. Just a cheerful letter and cartoon. That afternoon, while the others napped in faded recliners, I asked Kara if I could sit outside. "I'll have to sign you out and stay nearby," she said. Course, I smiled. "I'd like the bench by the parking lot." She wheeled me out, though I didn't need the wheelchair. "Just for protocol," she said. From that bench, I could see the delivery entrance and, more importantly, the outgoing mail. 3:15, the mail truck arrived. A man in uniform gathered the outgoing bin, threw it into the back, and drove off. I noted the time. Next day I was same time. This time with a letter addressed to Lydia Marks. Inside I told her everything, not in dramatic terms but plainly. They've taken my house. They've made decisions behind my back. I need someone on the outside. Trust you. I included my room number and asked her to call the law office. She agreed they'd know what to do next. The third day I came again. No letter this time, but just to sit to wait. At 3:47 my phone in the room rang. I hadn't heard it ring in days. Mrs. Sanders. Yes, this is Jessica from Lewis and Gold. We've spoken. My breath caught. Ms. Marks reached out. She's agreed to help. She's coming in tomorrow with ID and authorization. We'll begin the revocation paperwork and prepare the asset protection documents. My voice didn't come right away. When it did, it sounded smaller than I expected. Thank you. That evening I baked. Well, baked is a strong word. I bribed Robin, the night nurse, with a tin of shortbread cookies from my drawer to let me use the tiny staff kitchen. Watched me while I stirred. Planning something? She asked with a half smile. I met her eyes. Just remembering who I am. I'd always been a quiet woman. Not weak. Just accommodating. My husband used to say, "Hell, you're the kind of woman who keeps the world from spinning off its axis." I'd never known if that was a compliment or an apology. By the time the tea kettle whistled, Robin had stopped asking questions. She left me alone in that little kitchen, and I stood at the counter, warming my hands over a ceramic mug, thinking about a house on Hawthorne Drive. My house. The one with the bay window and the hydrangeas. The one where I raised 2 children. Where I sat with David during his fevers and helped Emily prepare for spelling bees. Now David's name was on the deed, not mine. A transfer of convenience, they'd said, for legal simplicity. That's what I'd signed 3 years ago. The same year they began talking about downsizing, about preparing for later life. That's what this was then. Preparation. I went back to my room and opened the small wooden box where I kept my wedding band, the one I stopped wearing after Richard died. I slipped it back on. The metal was colder than I remembered. The next morning Kara entered without knocking. "Your daughter's here." I looked up from my chair. "Emily." She nodded. "Came early, said she brought forms." I smiled faintly. "Let her in." Emily entered in heels, pressed slacks, and perfume that clung to her like forced warmth. "Hi, Mom." She leaned down and kissed my cheek too. Quickly. "What a surprise," I said. "Another form." She hesitated. "It's just the long-term authorization. Lets us make medical decisions on your behalf." "You mean after the one you already filed?" She blinked. "You revoked it." I said nothing. Emily's mouth twitched. "Mom, this isn't safe. You're being manipulated." I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my spine held. "You've made decisions for me. Now I'm making one." She held up a hand, still trying to keep the smile. "Let's just sit and talk." I shook my head. "I don't need to talk. I need you to listen." For the first time in years she did. Emily didn't like silence. Never had. As a girl, she'd fill any pause with utter facts from school, TV jingles, whatever, floated through her clever little mind. Now at 48, she filled silence with control, polished sentences, framed concern. She stood in my room, arms crossed over the folder she hadn't opened yet. "Mom, this is all just very sudden. You're clearly overwhelmed." "I'm not overwhelmed," I said calmly. Was sitting in my chair, hands folded in my lap. "I'm just finished pretending I'm confused." She faltered. "I'm not saying you're confused. I'm saying, well, you've been through a lot. And David and I, we've tried our best to do what Kept my voice low. To decide where I live, what happens to my savings, to my home. She sighed, glancing toward the door. This isn't the time for drama. Agree. We sat for a beat. The clock ticked. A bird chirped somewhere. Beyond the window. The only real sound in the room. I've spoken to a lawyer, I said. Emily looked up, startled. What lawyer? The same kind who prepared the first documents you both pushed in front of. Only this time he's on my side. Opened her mouth, then closed it. You're serious? A pause, then the shift. The subtle one from concern to strategy. I saw it in her eyes. Well, she said, with a little laugh. If that's what you want, of course. No one is trying to trap you, Mom. No, I asked. Then why? Was the house listed? Her eyes snapped to mine. What house? You know what house? Emily hesitated, and for the first time in a long while her poise cracked. David was looking into options, she said finally. You said yourself the place was too much to maintain. I said I didn't want to climb the back stairs anymore. That's not the same as signing away my life. You don't even live there now. That's not the point. She grew quiet. Then we've already had offers. He nodded. No. I'd called Lydia 2 nights ago, just after her meeting with the lawyers. She'd driven by the house that afternoon. There was a discreet little for sale by private listing sign staked in the lawn. Not on any public sites. They were being careful, quiet. They'd already scheduled showings. I'm moving the house back into my name, I said. The transfer was revocable and I'm placing it under a protective trust. Emily shook her head slowly, like I'd disappointed her. Mom, we're trying to help you. No, Emily, I said, my voice even. You're helping yourselves. She stared at me, and I could see the discomfort, not from guilt but from not being in control. How long have you been planning this? She asked. I started the moment I realized you and your brother didn't plan to let me go home. Emily looked down at the papers in her hands. She didn't open them. Well, she said again, too brightly. Then I guess there's nothing else to talk about. Turned toward the door. Emily, she stopped. Tell David I said that. He'll be hearing from the attorneys this week. The sale is off. The assets are frozen. And you two are no longer my representatives. She didn't turn around, just stood there for a moment, hands clenched, then walked out. That night, Mabel slid into the chair across from me during TV time. Well, she asked. Smiled. I believe my daughter's reconsidering her definition of helpful. Mabel chuckled, a dry knowing sound. You know, she said, when my son first put me here, he cried in the car. Said he felt awful. Said it wasn't forever. Mine didn't even cry. I said, guess that's something. She looked at me sideways. So what now? Leaned back. Air was warm. Somewhere down the hallway, someone was laughing. Now, I said, now. I wait. Wait for what? For the storm, I said. It's coming. This time I have a roof of my own. Later, alone in my room, I took out the key. Lydia had mailed me. The spare from the old garden shed. The one we used to keep tools in. It still smelled like rust and damp earth. That key wasn't just metal. It was memory. Proof. I wasn't a patient. I wasn't a problem to be managed. I was Helen Sanders, widow, mother, former teacher, homeowner. And I was taking back what was mine. The next day David called. Let it ring twice before answering. His voice was flat, clipped, the voice he used when he was preparing to be reasonable. Yes, I said calmly. Think. We need to talk. I think we already are. I heard from Emily about the house, about the lawyer. So it's true. I said. You two don't speak to me, but you talk to each other about selling my home. It's not your home anymore. There it was. Just like that. 5 words that dropped like a stone in my chest. David, I said. Do you remember the maple tree in the backyard? The one you climbed when you were 7 and broke your wrist. Silence. I sat up all night with you. You were shaking from the pain. I wrapped your arm in frozen peas while we waited for morning. What does that have to do with anything? Everything, I said. That house holds more of me than your name on a deed ever could. He sighed, already bored of the emotion. We just thought it would make sense to sell. Use the money for your care, for the grandchildren's future. We weren't doing anything wrong. No, I said. You were just doing it quietly. He grew defensive. You're being dramatic. You're in a good place now. You're safe. There are people looking after you. Isn't that what matters? No, David, I said evenly. What matters is that I didn't choose any of it. Could almost hear him rubbing his temples like he used to when he was 16 and didn't want to do his homework. Look, he said. You've already done your lawyer thing. Fine, but don't expect us to keep supporting you if you're going to be difficult. That's when I laughed. Actually laughed. Supporting me. His voice hardened. We've paid for everything. The facility, the medical bills, all of it. And where did you think that money came from? Yes. The generous contributions you and your sister made. He didn't answer. Paid for my own care, David. You just funneled the bills through your accounts and used my retirement funds to do it. Which you had access to because I trusted you. You didn't support me. Said you managed me. I ended the call. That afternoon, I sat in the courtyard with Mabel, watching a squirrel wrestle a cracker from beneath the bench. He yell? She asked, sipping her juice. No, I said. Worse, he explained. She chuckled, then winced, rubbing her side. You know, if I had one dover in this life, I'd write things down, not just recipes and addresses. I'd keep track of the giving. He nodded. I did. Actually. He turned. What? I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out my notebook. Inside, every loan, every gift, every expense covered, written in tidy rows like I was still grading essays. Tuition for Emily's MBA. $48,000. David's failed restaurant investment. $23 to $500 down payment on their first home. $60,000. Emily's 3 dental implants. $6,400. David's divorce. Lawyer. $12,000 annual Christmas checks. $200 per year for 15 years, countless. Groceries, babysitting, flight tickets, birthday parties, soccer uniforms, music. Lessons. I flipped the page. They said they'd support me, I said, but I've supported them my entire life. Mabel was quiet. Later in the dining hall, the nurse handed me a note. Folded paper, no envelope. Please meet me tomorrow. I have something to show you. Lydia. She'd written the address of a small cafe 2 miles from Rose Hill. He knew the place. I used to go there after church on Sundays. Good soup, no music. Folded the note, slipped it into my pocket, and went to bed early. Next morning, I asked Carrera for an escorted walk. She frowned. Where to? To get some fresh air, I said. You can do that in the courtyard. I'd like to walk past the entrance today just once. She pursed her lips. I'll check with Min. Do that. She returned 20 minutes later. Sorry, Mrs. Sanders. That's not permitted without family. Smiled. You see, that afternoon I waited until Robin's shift, the night nurse, the kind one, the one who liked shortbread cookies. At 5:50 p.m., I stood by the side entrance holding a small tin. When Robin turned the corner, I handed it to her. "Would you like the recipe?" Yes. She looked at me, then at the back door. 10 minutes, she said. "Be back in 10. Please." He nodded, slipped outside. The key Lydia sent worked in the staff gate. At 6:12 p.m., I was sitting across from her at the cafe sipping lentil soup. "Look good," she said. "I feel like myself again," I replied. She handed me a file. "These are the documents. The house is safe. The bank accounts are frozen until you approve access. The trust for your granddaughter is drafted. You just need to sign." Sign. As the pen moved across the paper, I didn't feel triumphant. Felt still, quiet, like something heavy had been lifted. "I should get back," I said. Lydia smiled. "You'll be back for now, but not for long." And I believed her. I returned through the side gate just before 7. Robin was waiting, arms crossed, her face unreadable. "You're lucky I like cookies," she said quietly. "I'm lucky you have a heart," I replied. She didn't answer. Just open the door and let me back in. That was enough. In my room, everything was as I left it. The bed made, the curtains half drawn, my notebook still on the table, open to a blank page. But I didn't sit. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the dresser and opened the drawer where I kept the old photographs. Not many, just the ones I'd taken with me when they moved me here. There was one of David as a toddler, his face smeared with cake, grinning up at the camera. Another of Emily in her ballet outfit, all elbows and ambition. A photo of Richard holding a rake in one hand and a mug of tea in the other, smiling at me from the porch. And then there was the picture I almost hadn't packed. One taken 10 years ago on the front steps of the house. Me in the center, David and Emily flanking me, their hands on my shoulders like proud children. But if you looked closely, you could see it even then. The small distance in their bodies, the tightness in their smiles. That photo had been for the realtor. A way to present a family home, a performance, not a memory. I slid it back into the drawer and sat down. The pen in my hand felt heavier than usual. Maybe because I knew what I needed to. Right now wasn't numbers or names. It was truth. September 14th. They said this was about safety, that I needed help, that they were doing what was best. But no one asked what I thought was best. No one asked what I needed. They decided for me. They called it love. But real love doesn't take your ease. Real love doesn't sell your house in secret. Real love doesn't put you in a room with a stranger and leave you there. They wanted a version of me that was quiet, grateful, compliant. A woman who said thank you when she was told where to sit. I am not that woman. Not anymore. The next morning, Emily came again, this time without warning. Cara buzzed my room just before 9 a.m. "Your daughter's here," she said. "Should I send her in?" "Let her wait," I said. Dressed slowly. Put on a clean blouse, brushed my hair. Chose the pearl earrings Richard had given me for our 20th anniversary. Nothing dramatic, just quiet armor. When I entered the common area, Emily was sitting by the window, scrolling on her phone. She looked up, startled. "Took your time. I've learned not to rush for people who didn't rush for me." She stood, trying to smile. "I didn't come to argue, Mom. I just wanted to talk. I'm listening." She hesitated, then pulled something from her bag, a glossy brochure. "This place isn't working for you," she David and I found another facility, better staff to resident ratio, more social activities. Farther out, but no. She blinked. Whoa. No, I'm not moving to another place. I didn't choose to smile at strangers. I didn't ask for and call it a fresh start. Emily straightened. Don't understand. We're trying to. I raised a hand. No, you don't understand. I pulled out the copy of the trust document Lydia had given me, held it out. She didn't take it. What is that? Everything, I said. Every asset, every account, everything you thought was under your control. It isn't anymore. Her face darkened. You're doing this to punish us. No, I said calmly. I'm doing this to protect myself. Emily looked down at the paper, then back at me. Oh, what now? You cut us off. No, I'm leaving the door open, I said. But I'm not leaving myself outside of it anymore. She didn't have a reply. When she left, she didn't hug me. I didn't expect her to. That afternoon, Mabel asked how it went. Like peeling off wallpaper, I said. Well, and stuck, but satisfying once it's gone. She laughed, that dry, raspy chuckle I'd come to like. You're not done yet, she said. I know, because while the documents were signed and the house was safe and the bank accounts were locked down, one thing still remained. My body was here. My dignity had come home. But I hadn't. Not yet. And if I was going to leave this place, really leave, it would have to be on my own feet. I started with shoes. That sounds silly. Maybe. But after weeks in soft-soled slippers and statioured socks, I needed something that reminded me of pavement, of friction, of leaving. I asked Robin if I could get my black walking shoes back from storage. They're a bit heavy for indoors, she said, puzzled. Exactly. She didn't argue, just nodded. And made a note. That's what I liked about her. She didn't pretend to know better. She just listened. When they brought the box to my room, the shoes still smelled faintly of linseed oil and old leather polish. I held them for a long time before putting them on. They felt strange at first, like someone else's boots, but after a few steps, my feet remembered. The next day, I added the cardigan I used to wear for errands. Then the canvas shoulder bag with the zippered pouch I'd always trusted with my house keys. Not because I was leaving, not yet, but because I wanted to feel like someone who could. In the courtyard, I started walking again. First 5 minutes, then 10. At 16 minutes, my knees complained. At 20, they quieted. By Thursday, I was walking 30 minutes straight, no rest. The aides began to notice. She's getting stronger, Carrera said to one of the others. No one gets stronger here, the other replied. They just stopped fighting. Didn't correct her. Let her think whatever she liked. Let them all think I was getting stronger for no reason at all. On Friday, the mail came with a letter addressed to me in sharp blue ink. Not from Emily, not from David. From Eloise, my granddaughter. I hadn't seen her in nearly 6 months. Not since her last year of college started, but there it was. Her handwriting, her words. Grandma, I don't know what's going on, but Mom's been acting strange. Had to. No one tells me anything, but I know something's wrong. I tried to visit you. They said you weren't seeing anyone. That didn't sound like you. If you get this, please call or write. Anything. Miss you. That was all. I read the letter 3 times, then pressed it flat between the pages of my notebook. That night I made a list. Call Eloise. Walk past the staff gate. Memorize staff. Prepare documents for Monday courier. Talk to Mabel. Ask about exits. The last one I did first. Mabel was in the sunroom as usual, fiddling with a jigsaw puzzle no one else had touched in weeks. You ever think about leaving? Asked. She snorted. Every Tuesday. Seriously. She looked up at me. Her face was tired, but her eyes were still sharp. I think about it, she said. But I don't have what you have. And what's that? Someone waiting. I didn't say anything. She nodded at my bag. We've been packing that for a week. It's not packed, I said. Course not, she said. But you're closer to the door than you were last month. On Sunday morning I woke before dawn. Outside, the sky was that strange violet blue it gets right before light begins. I dressed quietly, slipped my notebook, my ID, and Lydia's documents into my bag, tied my scarf, laced my shoes. Robin's shift ended at 6 a.m. 5:40 I went down to the laundry corridor, the one they never locked because the delivery carts needed access. No one was there. The halls were silent. I stepped through the door down the ramp out into the open air. It wasn't freedom, not yet. But it was a test, one I passed. I stood by the trees, breathing in cold, damp morning air that didn't smell like disinfectant or lavender spray. And I made a promise. 1 week, 7 days. By then I'd be gone. When I returned, no one noticed. It was the most surprising part. I walked past Kara with a nod. She nodded back, assuming I'd come from the courtyard. My cardigan was damp. My shoes had leaves on them, but she didn't look. No one really looks at old women when they move quietly. That's the trick. That's always been the trick. Back in my room I called Lydia. Left a voicemail. Monday, I said. I'll send everything. Just tell me where. Then I called Eloise. She picked up on the second ring. Grandma. Voice cracked. It's me, sweetheart. Oh my God. I thought she stopped, took a breath. Are you okay? I'm working on it. What happened? They won't tell me anything. Mom just keeps saying, Grandma's fine. Like that explains everything. I didn't lie. They didn't want me to talk to you, but I do. So I am. Do you want me to come there? No, I want you to wait just for now. I hate this, she whispered. It's like they've erased you. Then help me rewrite it. She didn't ask what that meant. She just said, tell me what to do. Smiled. Already did. Then I hung up and wrote a note to Lydia, folded it into the documents, sealed the envelope. Tomorrow I would walk to the mail slot. By the service entrance at 3:15 p.m. And by Friday I would have a car, a ride. And the front door. The envelope dropped into the mail bin at exactly 3:16 p.m. I didn't linger. Didn't look back, just turned, adjusted the strap on my bag and walked slowly toward the lobby, blending into the shuffle of other residents returning from crafts and board games. No one asked where I'd been. No one noticed I'd carried something with me. Not Kara, not the aide with a high ponytail whose name I still hadn't learned. By now I had become exactly what they wanted me to be. Quiet, predictable, harmless, and that suited me perfectly. That evening I sat across from Mabel during dinner. They were serving chicken with gravy and a mashed substance they called potatoes, but tasted like chalk. I pushed the food around my plate. What's next? She asked without looking up. You'll see, I said. You know, she said, dabbing the corners of her mouth with a napkin. Most people would have broken by now. You've been here. What? 6 weeks. 51 days. I said, not that I'm counting. She gave a short laugh. You'll make it out, she said. I can see it in the way you sit. In the way I sit. You're not leaning back, she. You're always ready to stand. He didn't answer, but I thought about that for a long time after. On Wednesday, Lydia told. They're ready, she said. All of it. Everything. Title secured, trust Filed, the letter for the facility director, the formal request for release, the legal notice for the bank. All signed. You just need to be picked up. Friday, I said 3 o'clock side gate. Hesitated. You're sure? I'm sure. All right, I'll be there. Just tell me what to bring. An empty car, I said. Me. Cup of real coffee. The next 2 days passed like fog. Went to art therapy, painted a lopsided sunflower, watched reruns in the common room, took my meds, smiled at the nurses, played my part, but inside the gears were turning. Thursday night I packed quietly. Few clothes, my notebook, the pearl earrings, Lydia's letter, the envelope from Eloise. Left. The rest. The things they'd picked for me. The things that didn't belong. I stared at the picture of Richard for a long time before slipping it into the side pocket of my bag. He'd always hated goodbyes, so I wouldn't say one. Friday came with sun, a rare thing. By 2:30 I was dressed and ready. Simple. Pants, soft blouse, walking shoes. The cardigan I'd worn the day I arrived. Walked the hallway slowly, nodding to a few residents who didn't know my name. Cara saw me near the staff lounge and smiled. You look nice today, Mrs. Sanders. Thank you, I said. You heading to the music hour? Something like that. She moved on. 2:55 I stood at the laundry corridor door. My heart beat louder than I wanted it to. Robin appeared like she always did. Out again? She asked. Just for air. Looked at me carefully. Her eyes flicked to the bag on my shoulder. You coming back this time? I met her eyes. Whoa. She nodded slowly like she'd known it was coming. I didn't see anything, she said, stepping aside. I never gave you the recipe, I replied. She smiled faintly. I'll survive. I stepped out. The sun hit my face, warm and soft and real. I walked down the ramp and turned the corner toward the staff gate. Lydia's car was there, engine running. She stepped out when she saw me, opened the passenger door without a word. Inside, a cup of coffee sat in the holder just like I'd asked. She didn't say, "You did it." She didn't say, "Welcome back." She just handed me the mug and adjusted the heat. We drove away without music, without fanfare. I watched Rose Hill fade behind us in a mirror. It didn't look like a prison from the outside. It looked like a home. But I knew the difference now, and I wouldn't forget it. 20 minutes later, we pulled up in front of my house. My house. The for sale sign was gone. The blinds were open. The porch swing still swayed gently in the breeze. Lydia parked, turned off the engine and looked at me. Are you ready? I've been ready since they dropped me. I stepped out. The sidewalk cracked just where I remembered. The gate squeaked. The stairs creaked beneath my shoes. Everything was exactly the same. And everything was different. I opened the door with my own key, crossed the threshold, and stood in silence. The house didn't smell like dust. Smelled like memory. I set my bag down on the floor, took off my shoes, walked barefoot to the kitchen. The windows were clean. The kettle still worked. Drawer still held my old address book. I sat at the table and for the first time in 51 days I was home. The house was quieter than I remembered. Not the sterile quiet of the facility, with its humming vents and soft-heeled shoes. This was a lived-in silence, the kind that carries echoes, clinks of long-washed teacups. The tick of a wall clock set 15 minutes fast. The distant creak of the porch swing in the wind. I walked from room to room like I was meeting an old friend. After a long absence, carefully, almost shyly, the living room still smelled faintly of books. My chair by the window, the one no one ever sat in but Me was exactly where I'd left it. The Afghan draped over its back hadn't been moved. In the bedroom, the bed was made, the sheets pressed. Lydia must have seen to that. But the pillow still had the faint shape of how I used to sleep, curled toward the window, my hand near my face. I stood there for a long time, fingers trailing along the dresser. Then I noticed it on the nightstand. A single photo face down. I turned it over. Emily, David, Eloise. Christmas 2 years ago. All of them smiling, paper crowns on their heads. Cheap ones from the crackers I insisted on buying every year. Someone, not me, had put the frame face down. Maybe out of guilt, or maybe because guilt was too much trouble, and they simply didn't want to be reminded. I set it up right, not out of forgiveness, but because truth shouldn't be hidden, even in pictures. That evening Lydia stopped by to check in. She brought soup, the good kind. Homemade, with lentils and rosemary and little bits of carrot that actually tasted like something. She didn't ask how I felt. She just set the bag down, ladled it into a bowl, and sat across for me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You'll need groceries," she said. "I can help with that." "I have a list," I replied, sliding it across the table. She scanned and smiled. "You still eat the same way. Stubbornness is good for digestion." She laughed, then grew quiet. "I hope I didn't overstep with the house, the files, the trust." "You didn't. You've always been kind to me. And I couldn't stand seeing what they." She stopped herself. I reached across the table and touched her hand. "You did right, Lydia. More right than either of my children in years." She nodded, her eyes wet but not billing. "They're going to be furious." "Hope so." She looked up, startled. Ooh. "I want them to feel something, Lydia. Anger is at least a sign of life. It means they'll have to reckon with what they've done. And if they show up, they won't." But I was wrong, because 2 hours later there was a knock at the door. Opened it. David stood on the porch, his tie undone, his expression sharp and strained. "You're here," he said, as if I'd broken into my own home. "I am." He stepped inside without being invited. Looked around like a stranger, like someone revisiting a crime scene. Couldn't even call. "I think we're past pleasantries." He turned, exasperated. "Do you have any idea what kind of mess this is creating? I have a folder full of the mess you and your sister created. Shall I fetch it?" His jaw tightened. "This isn't just about you, Mom. You've put us in an impossible position. The sale is cancelled." He paced a little, stopping at the fireplace. "We had buyers. Deal. You can't just pull the rug out like that. You pulled it first." He turned to me, his voice rising. "We did what we thought was best. You're not well. You needed supervision." He stepped closer. "I needed respect, David. Not surveillance." He didn't answer. Looked at me. Really looked for the first time in a long time. "You've changed," he said finally. "No," I said. "I've remembered." He looked down at his hands. "Emily says you've locked us out of the accounts, Ev, and put the house in a trust." He sat down heavily on the edge of the couch. "Not the way someone sits in comfort. The way someone sits when their world shifts under them. So that's it," he said. "You're done with us." I stood tall. "I'm done being used." He rubbed his eyes. "What do you want?" I stared at him for a moment, then said quietly, "I want you to leave. And I want you to think about the day you handed your mother over to strangers like she was a burden you couldn't carry anymore." He didn't argue, didn't yell, just stood, walked to the door and left. No goodbyes, no promises, only silence and the sound of my lock turning behind him. The house was colder after David left. Not from the weather. The heat worked just fine, but from the way his presence had stirred the air, that old heaviness, the one I'd known since he was 16 and started speaking to me like I was furniture. I stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door, listening to the quiet. It didn't comfort me. Not right away. Matey. Not for warmth, but for rhythm. The familiar steps. Fill kettle. Wait for the boil. Or. The taste steadied me. That night. Slept. In my own bed for the first time in 52 days. The sheets were clean, but the room still felt unfamiliar. Or maybe it was me who had changed. The mattress was softer than I remembered. Pillow too high. Still I slept. And when I woke, it was to sunlight. Not fluorescent ceiling panels or scheduled blood pressure checks. Quiet no longer. Felt cold. Felt earned. By noon the letter came. Delivered by courier hand. Addressed from Emily. I read it standing up. Mother, I don't know what to say. David called. He said you've shut us out. Said you don't want to talk. You done. Is that true? Because I don't recognize the woman he described. Angry, calculated, cold. You were never like that. And if this is about the house, about the choices we made, then maybe we made mistakes. We weren't trying to hurt you. We were just trying to do what made sense. Was never supposed to come to this. Please call me. Please. Emily. I set the letter down without folding it. Not out of disrespect, but because folding would make it easier to keep, and I didn't want to keep it. Wasn't guilt on the page. That was regret that she'd been caught. I spent the rest of the day going through drawers, not to clean, to remember. Receipts from the garden. Center, faded and curled. Old keys I no longer recognized. A bookmark from Eloise drawn in crayon when she was 7. A crooked heart and the words, "Grandma, I love your stories." That one I kept. I found the medical bills Emily had taken care of, each stamped with my bank account number, found the deed. Transfer documents, my signature, careful, deliberate, right beside David's. I'd signed willingly once, but that was before I knew what it meant to. It wasn't about safety. It was about possession. On Sunday morning, Eloise arrived. No warning, no text, just the sound of a car door and quick steps on the path. I opened the door before she could knock. She threw her arms around me, fierce and fast. "Grandma!" I held her tighter than I meant to. She pulled back, blinking tears away. "You look good. You look taller," she laughed. "I was so scared," she said. "They told me you were confused, that you didn't want visitors, that you were resting." "I was resting," I said. "Resting from being treated like luggage." She didn't. "Mel. Sorry. You didn't do it." "I didn't stop it either." She stepped inside, took in the house, the photos, the chair, the scent of lemon polish. "Still smells like you," she said. "Let's hope that's a good thing." We sat at the kitchen table. "Porty." She didn't touch hers. "Got your letter," she said. "Scared me." "I know, but I'm glad you sent it." "Am I?" Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "What's that?" "Something I wrote for school," she. "Paper about intergenerational trust, family power, set control." I didn't understand it until this happened. She slid it across the table. "I thought I knew who we were. And now I think I know who you are." I smiled but didn't reach all the way. "That's more than your mother can say." She lowered her gaze. "I don't want to be like her." "And don't." She looked up. "That's simple." "Well, but simple and easy aren't the same thing." When she left, she hugged me again. This time she lingered. "I'll call," she said. "Oh. When you want to, not when you think you should." "Okay." She walked to the car with her shoulders a little straighter, and I watched her go with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not pride, not hope. Something older, something steadier. A quiet knowing that even if I was alone, now I hadn't been erased. I was still here. And I wasn't done yet. Monday morning came with rain. Not the soft kind, but a steady gray drizzle that made the windows blur and the roof groan gently above the kitchen. I liked it. It gave the house a pulse again, a rhythm like the old days when I'd cook with the radio humming and Richard humming louder. But this morning I didn't put on music. Instead, I sat at the table, notebook open, pen in hand. At the top of the page I wrote, "Question. What do I want now?" Not what I'd lost. Not what they'd taken. Not what had been returned by lawyers or couriers or last-minute apologies. Just what do I want? The question sat there for a long time. Then slowly I began to answer it. I want my name on every page that concerns me. I want mail addressed to me, not my children. I want to choose who enters my house. I want a garden again, even if it's small. I want to hear my own voice when I say yes or no. I want silence that I choose, not the kind handed to me by others. I want to matter, even if only to myself. Close the notebook. That was enough for one morning. Around noon there was another knock at the door. This time I didn't rush. I stood steady, calm, opened it. Emily, not dressed up. No perfume, just jeans, a raincoat, and a face I hadn't seen in years. Hers. Unguarded. "May I come in?" she asked. "That depends. On what?" "On whether you came to talk or to explain." She hesitated, then stepped back. "Came to listen." "Open the door." She sat at the kitchen table like she used to years ago when she'd visit with Eloise and pretend not to judge the way I folded towels. I poured tea for both of us. This time she drank it. We didn't speak at first. Then she said softly, "I didn't think you'd come back. No. I thought once you were there you'd get used to it. Like a chair gets used to the corner it's shoved into." Flinched. "I didn't mean, but you did mean it. I said you wanted me out of the way." She looked down at her cup. "I didn't know how to help you. So you decided. For me." Her voice cracked. "I didn't want to become you." And blinked. "What? Lived alone after Dad died. You never asked for anything. You didn't date. Didn't lean on anyone. Scared me. And so you locked me away. I thought I was protecting you from becoming invisible." I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "But you made me invisible, Emily. You didn't protect me. You erased me." Her eyes filled. "I'm sorry." It wasn't loud. Wasn't dramatic. Just 2 words finally spoken. Without defense. "I know you are," I said. "But sorry isn't the same as changed." She nodded. "I want to earn it," she said. "You can start by not touching anything in this house again. Not a bill, not a paper, not a doorknob. I won't. And the next time you feel scared of becoming me, maybe ask why I lived the way I did. Maybe wonder what it cost me." She wiped her eyes. Then she stood. "I won't come back unless you ask me to. That's a good start." She walked to the door, opened it, paused. "You were always stronger than I gave you credit for." "No," I said. "I just stopped apologizing for surviving." She left without another word, and I stood in the hallway watching the rain. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was truth. And that for now was enough. That night I left the porch light on. Not because I was expecting anyone. Wasn't. but because I could. Sounds small. No. Light. But after 52 days under flickering fluorescents and timed switches, after having strangers decide when I should sleep, when I should wake, when I was allowed to be alone, the act of turning on my own porch light felt like a declaration. This is my house. I decide who sees it. I didn't sleep much. The rain had stopped, but the quiet outside was sharp, like something waiting to speak. I sat in the armchair by the window and watched the street like I used to. Whoa. One passed. No cars, no dogs barking, just stillness. I didn't mind. Stillness belonged to me now. In the morning I baked oatmeal cookies. Kind Richard liked with too much cinnamon and chopped raisins I never told the kids were soaked in brandy. House warmed up. Not just from the oven but from the scent, like memory. Exhaling. At 11:30, I set a plate of them out on the counter and made a fresh pot of coffee. I was expecting someone today, not family, not Lydia. Mabel, she'd called the night before. Well, she'd said, "Is it as sweet as you thought?" "It's not sweet," I replied. "It's right." She'd paused, then said, "Then maybe I'll come see what right looks like." She arrived in a taxi, wearing her good coat and a scarf I hadn't seen since the spring. Her walker came out first, then her feet, careful, determined. I opened the door before she rang. "Took you long enough, I." She grinned, winded already. "You try getting a cab when your address still says Rose Hill." I helped her inside and she looked around with the kind of slow attention I understood too well. The way you look at something you used to want but no longer believe you're allowed to reach. "You did it," she said. "Well, corrected. Or, I undid what they did." She nodded. "That counts." We had cookies and coffee in the kitchen. I offered her the chair with the pillow. She declined it proudly. "Everyone there still thinks you'll come back," she said. "They think wrong." She broke a cookie in half. Robin cried a little. That stopped me. "Robin," she said, she shouldn't have had to go alone. I swallowed hard. She let me go. That was more than most people did. You know. We ate quietly for a while. Then Mabel looked at me. "Seriously, you're not just going to sit here now, are you?" "You might," said. "That's not what I meant." "You know." She leaned forward. "You beat them." What? That question. It had been whispering at me for days. What now? Poured more coffee. Let the steam rise between us. I don't want revenge, I don't want to teach anyone a lesson. I just want to live without needing permission. Mabel smiled. "That's plenty." We sat for hours, talked about nothing and everything, about names we hadn't spoken in years, about recipes, about politics, about bodies that don't work the way they used to but still carry too much memory. When it was time for her to go, I called the cab myself, gave them a different drop-off. "Not Rose Hill." She looked surprised. "I changed your address," I said. "They'll forward everything now." She blinked. "Even if I'm still there?" "You're not," I said. "Not in the ways that count." After she left, I stood at the doorway a long time. The porch was empty again, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. Inside, I sat at the table and opened my notebook again. This time no lists, just one sentence. "I am not someone you put away." Then I closed the book, lit a candle, and let the quiet fill the house. Not like a cage but like something chosen. 2 days later, the letter came from the real estate agency. Thin envelope. Crisp paper, too formal for guilt, too polite for fury. "Dear Miss Sanders, we are writing to inform you that the prospective buyers for the property at Hawthorne Drive have withdrawn their interest following a legal halt initiated by your representation. Additionally, the agency has been instructed to remove all listings and suspend future showings until further notice. Should you wish to re-engage with us under your sole authority, we would be happy to assist. No apology, no names, just an invitation, sterile and transactional, to start over. I placed the letter in the drawer beside my teacups and wrote across the envelope in ink. Closed, not to remind myself, to remind them should they ever come again. The next morning David called, not to ask, to demand. "You've complicated everything," he said, skipping any greeting. "Good morning to you too. This isn't a joke, Mom. Do you realize the financial consequences? Do. You've frozen assets that were already in motion. I've reclaimed assets that were misused." There was a pause, then a sigh. The kind men give when women refuse to yield. "Emily's furious. I'm sure she is. She feels like you've cut us out of your life." "I haven't cut anyone. I've redrawn the boundaries." "That's not fair," he snapped. "We've been the ones dealing with everything since Dad died." "Exactly. What does that mean?" "Means you stepped in and started managing everything like a business, and you forgot I was still alive." His voice flattened. "You're acting like a victim." "No," I said calmly. "I'm acting like the owner of my own life. It's just new for you." He went quiet again. Then suddenly, he said, "You could have just asked us to slow down." "I did. You called it confusion. You didn't have to go this far." Smiled. "You went further." He didn't argue after that. Just hung up. That afternoon I called Eloise. "How are you, Grandma?" "Calm," I said, which feels strange. "Strange how?" "Like walking on a bridge that used to shake but now it holds." She was quiet for a moment. "And Mom's not doing well." "That's not mine to fix." "I know, but I thought you should." "Well, thank you. I still want to come visit again soon." "Like that. Bring nothing but yourself." She laughed. "I never do." After we hung up I went inside. The air was sharp but not bitter. The trees had started to turn flicker of rust and ochre at the edges. I walked the length of the garden path, one step at a time, until I reached the wood. It still stood, crooked and stubborn. Inside were the tools, old, slightly rusted but familiar. I reached for the spade, gripped it, felt its weight in my hand. I had no plans to plant anything that day. I just needed to hold something that had purpose. In the evening, I reheated soup and sat at the table with my notebook open, rereading old entries. Not the numbers. The words. I want silence I choose, not the kind handed to me by others. I want to matter, even if only to myself. Each line felt more true now than when I'd written it. I added a new one. Will not explain my dignity to anyone. Later, just before bed, I heard a noise. Inside. Car. I peeked through the curtains. Emily, she didn't get out. Just sat in the driver's seat, engine running, lights off, watching the house. I stood there in the dark, not moving, not hiding either. After a few minutes, she pulled away. Whoa. Call, no message, just presence. It didn't scare me. Confirmed something. They still didn't understand. I wasn't waiting for them anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear. That had passed. It was something else. A stillness in the body that doesn't mean rest. Just readiness. Like the quiet before the first step onto a bridge you built yourself. By morning, the feeling hadn't left. Dressed slowly, choosing the cardigan with a stitched pocket, the one I'd worn the day Lydia picked me up. Made. He ate toast, wrote nothing. Some days require silence, not reflection. At 10:45 the doorbell rang. I already knew who it was. Emily stood on the porch. No coat, no bag, hair pulled back too tight. Kind of look you wear when you need to convince yourself you're composed. I won't stay long, she said. I nodded and stepped aside. She walked in like the floor might collapse under her. We sat in the kitchen. She looked around as if the house itself had shifted, as if the walls might accuse her. I drove by yesterday, she said. Don't know why. Do. She waited, but I didn't explain. I wanted to see if it felt the did it? No, she said. It felt like I didn't belong here anymore. 'Cause you never did. Her mouth tightened. You raised us here and then you turned it into a transaction. Her eyes welled. I didn't mean to believe you. She blinked. I believe you didn't mean to hurt me, I continued. That doesn't mean you didn't. I thought I was doing the right thing. Because it was easier than asking me what I wanted. She didn't answer. Poured tea, set the cup in front of her. She wrapped her hands around it like she needed proof she was still here. I kept waiting for you to forgive me, she said. But now I'm not sure I deserve. Took my seat. Forgiveness isn't something I owe you. No. I may never give it. I understand, but I'm willing to tell you something you deserve to. Here. She looked up hopeful. You hurt me, I said. You treated me like something inconvenient, and for that I will never be the same. He nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. But I added, I'm still your mother and I don't need you to fix that. I just need you to accept it. She cried harder now. No dramatic sobs, just quiet, broken, leaking like something inside her had cracked. And instead of rushing to patch it, she let it bleed. When she finally spoke again, her voice was hoarse. I thought I was losing you. But you were the one losing us. No, I said gently. I was losing myself and I took her back. She reached across the table, not for my hand, but for the photograph sitting near the napkin holder, the one of her and David on the porch years ago. She held it for a moment, then set it down. Do you want me to leave? I want you to understand that staying will never look the same again. She nodded, then stood. Before she left, she turned and said, I'm not sure how to be your daughter anymore. Then start by being someone I'd choose to know. She left without another word. And for the first time, I believed she might not return out of guilt, but out of something else. Maybe not soon, but honestly. Later that day, I walked down to the corner market. The cashier recognized me. Been a while, he said. Has, I replied. But I haven't forgotten where things are. I bought eggs, apples, the kind of bread you have to slice yourself. Paid in cash. On the way home, I passed a group of boys on bicycles, cutting through the street like they owned it. They didn't see me. That used to bother me, the way the world learns to look through women like me. But not now. Invisibility felt like a choice. I reached my gate, opened it, walked into my own home. That night I lit a candle. Just one, let it burn while I cleaned the sink, folded a towel, turned the porch light off for the evening. I didn't journal. I didn't write a list. Simply sat with myself, unobserved, unapologetic. And in that quiet I felt something I hadn't in years. Not pride, not safety, just rightness. As if the house, the chair, the silence, all of it had been waiting for me to return, not just as the person who once left it, but as the woman who knew now what she could survive and what she would never allow again. There's a different kind of silence that comes after a storm. Not relief, not peace, just space. Space to feel what you hadn't let yourself feel while everything was breaking. I stood by the kitchen window that Morning, watching the light move across the neighbor's fence. Nothing extraordinary, just another September day. But for me, it was the first morning I didn't brace myself for anything. No calls, no visits, no decisions made without me. Just the sound of the kettle, the creak of the floor, the quiet flutter of a sparrow landing on the porch rail. I didn't think about Emily. I didn't think about David. I didn't even think about what they might try next, because none of it belonged to me anymore. In the afternoon I went to the backyard. The garden was half dead. Weeds along the edges. The soil cracked. The rosemary bush listing to one side like it had grown tired of standing. It was still there. I knelt slowly, gloves on, and pressed my hands into the dirt. It wasn't easy. My knees ached. My back complained. The spade resisted but gave. Inch by inch I turned the soil. I wasn't planting anything yet. I just wanted the ground to breathe again, to be touched with intention, not neglect. As I worked, the sun warmed the back of my neck. I could smell the old earth. Not rot, not decay, just rest. Like even the dirt had been waiting for someone to remember what it could hold. That evening Eloise called. "Grandma," she said. "You busy?" "I'm in the middle of making a decision about dinner. It's very serious." She laughed. "Need backup?" "You offering to cook?" "No, but I can bring takeout." Smiled then. Arrived 20 minutes later holding a paper bag and a bottle of something fizzy. Didn't ask permission. She didn't wait on the porch. She just walked in. "Hope you like curry," she said, setting the bag on the table. "Let's find out." We didn't talk much at first. Then over the last bites she asked, "Do you think it's possible to become someone new after all that's happened?" I looked. Her. Really looked. She wasn't asking for herself. Not really. She was asking if it was too late. I said, "You don't become someone new. Remember who you were before you forgot." She nodded slowly. "Then I've got work to do." "We all do." She stayed late, washed the dishes without being asked, put the leftovers in the fridge, folded the dish towel exactly the way I like it, though I never told her how. When she left, she hugged me. And before she walked out, she turned and said, "I like you here, Grandma." Like this. Didn't ask what this meant. He knew. Later that night I sat with my notebook. Again. One last time. Not to make a list, not to write names, just to leave something behind, a single page. If you're reading this and you've ever been made small, if you've been told you're confused when you were just unheard, if you've sat quietly at a table where no one looked at you while deciding your life, if they said you'll stay there forever, then know this. They were wrong. You can sign your name again. You can sell their version of you right out from under them. You can leave and come back. And live inside a house that holds your voice. You can be old and still own yourself. You're not done. I closed the notebook. Set it on the shelf. No ceremony, no spotlight. Just a quiet ending that wasn't really an ending at all. Just the start of something that had always been. And if you've read this far, if something in you stirred even a little, then maybe it's time to stand up, time to go home, time to stop asking for permission, because no one gets to decide who you are except you. If this story felt like yours too, leave a comment. Say, "I'm still here," because someone out there needs to know they're not alone. The story continues in the next chapter in the next linked video. But first, I need you to subscribe to join the family, as we are looking forward to hit our first 10,000 subscribers target, and feel free to share your story in the comments. You matter, your voice does too.